So the job we're going to tackle today is the transfer case. I've got a fault with the vehicle speed sensor that sits on the back of the transfer case. I've diagnosed that. It's not outputting anything. I've visually inspected it. I just want to make sure there's no internal damage to the transfer case before I replace that speed sensor. I've got him all jacked up. Ideally you want to hoist him up. I've got a pair of ramps and a pair of vehicle stands, so I'm going to use that. That's the vehicle speed sensor there. And what I want to do first off is I want to drain the oil out and strain it to see if there's any metal bits in there. And then I want to take just this back piece off, which is what that speed sensor is bolted to. So basically I have to just take all of this off, unbolt this 24mm ring spanner. Find these give you a better grip than a socket. Does feel a bit gritty. There are some metal pieces on there, which is not good. The rest of this oil seems pretty clean though. A little bit of cardboard here just to catch any drips. Straining nicely there. This is a little bit of metal that was found. That's probably the biggest piece that was stuck to the drain plug, which is not a good start. Now I'm going to drain this, see if we can find anything else. The oil's quite clean. There's nothing in the bottom here. In terms of any fragments down here, it is looking very clean, which is probably the best we could hope for. So now I'm going to take this dynamic damper off. Need a 14. Bit of leverage. Love a bit of leverage. There's four of these bolts. You can see by sliding this dynamic damper back, it allows you to get to that bolt for the speed sensor there. So this has got one of those fancy little clips to keep the thing on. All you can do is just pop it out like that. I'll just take it out. And now your plug is off. You can see there with that connector removed now, it allows you to put your 10mm socket on there, and that clears the top. It's not a great amount of room in there to play. You just need to just crack that. You can even use a 10mm spanner if that's what you want to use. A long bolt. Now we just squeeze that one out. You can see some witness marks there. The damage has happened here in this housing. The only way we're going to find out is to take this off. That's where the vehicle speed sensor was. This next one over here is the output shaft speed sensor. It doesn't have a metal clip, it's just your normal electrical clip where you just push and remove like that. And he's a 10mm as well from the other side of the transfer case. Just going to push this dynamic damper forward, because what I'm going to need to do now is take this tail shaft off. The other thing I need to do is wrap this, because this is carbon fibre reinforced polymer. You don't want to damage it, you certainly don't want to drop it. It's not traditional steel. Just got some wrap here. Just to put that around there. Just a bit of electrical tape, that's probably all I need to do. Anytime you remove a shaft, you should always just mark it. 14mm on my 12mm. I guarantee these will be tight. I'm removing this last bolt here. You can see that this isn't moving. So what I'm going to do is use a cold chisel, and I'm going to try and just rotate the flange to break just to break that rust seal. So I'm just going to do that gently and supporting the shaft with my arm. Starting to see some gap. So now I can just pull this shaft out very gently. Don't want to damage any seal. Next trick, take this off. Got to take all these bolts off. Same deal, 14 long extension and a bit of leverage. Just crack them first. We're just gonna give it a little love tap. There we go. You can see there's a couple of fragments there, and that is what's been rolling around, and it's damaged the output shaft speed sensor, and the same with this vehicle speed sensor. Can't see any major obvious damage to the circlip, but there's definitely been scuffing of the tone wheel. So the tone wheel here has got cutouts, and that's what generates the signal on the pickup. So what I'm going to do is just take this off, take that circlip out. This will slide off. There's some more circlips back here. I just want to have a bit more of an inspection. Let's see, there's a little locating. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this this bearing out, see what I can see behind there. Get that one off. Okay, not seeing anything obvious so far. It's a bearing. Smooth. There's no grittiness. The race is all still intact. The next thing we're going to do is actually take this transfer case out. We're going to support this with a jack. Take that cross member off, which will help us get to these bolts. Then put the cross member back on, support that transmission, and then we're going to get a jack under the transfer case and pull it out. 14mm bolts. Okay, so I've taken the cross member bolts out on each side. There's two nuts here for the transmission mount, and there's also a bolt up here which is relatively easy to get to. Then this one here, you can still get into that one. You just sort of leave this down a bit, you can get your socket straight in there. And there you can see all those bolts we've got to get up into. just going to start loosening these whichever way that I can. 14 mil. I'm going to take the bottom ones and the top ones off and just loosen the ones on the sides, and then I'm going to put the cross member back on. Because I don't want this thing falling apart without it being properly supported. Now there's a bolt there at the top, and the best way to get to that is put the ratchet in from the other side, and then there's also 2 more nuts like these studs here right on the top. Like this here. You could take this front shaft off, not worth it, just leave it there, because when we drag this back that'll just sit there on the cross member when we put it back. Yeah, we're just making sure that all our wiring's clear so we can pull this thing out unimpeded. I'll pump this back up. Last 2 bolts. Okay, she's out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this top plate off. That's the little gears that sit in there. This is our selector mechanism, powered by the actuator at the back. So I'm going to take that off. See here how that moves it. And the only way to pull this out is to pull our little gears out, like so. Of course we lose a little pin, little ball bearings. So these little ball bearings, they move up and down as the selector shaft moves, and that pushes on the switches, which tells the computer where it is at. Now I'm going to move all of these bolts. Feels nice. Everything seems to look okay. You can see what looks to be a little bit of a metal fragment down there. That might be a little gear tooth. And then over here are those 2 little ball bearings we lost. It's the chain. Not sure if that's how much play it's supposed to have. And this is our center differential. A little snap ring up here. Pull him out. Needle roller bearings here. And there we have it, folks. Oh, look at all those little teeth. Center differential most definitely has died. The carrier has actually broken. Teeth are sheared off. Look at that carnage and destruction. We'll just take you off. More little bits of teeth. Oh, here we go. That one's broken. Sweet. That's not good. Big work. So, new transfer case has arrived. When I say new, I mean second hand from the wreckers. Let's get this open and have a look. Everything seems to be intact, is what we want to see. This loom's all been cut, so essentially got to take all that off. Before I go any further, is to see if there's any damage on these sensors. Absolutely beautiful. You can see that tone wheel looks very nice and shiny. The other thing I want to show you is this here. This is the breather, and that goes to the automatic transmission. That's the side of the automatic. That's the top there. And that little black thing up the top is a breather holder. And so that's where the breather hose from the transfer case goes up to, and it's open. So it just goes straight up there and clips in. And then there's another one for the automatic transmission, and it's up there, up the top there, clipped in as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this T-piece down to here. So we're going to put that one on here. Put him on there like that. Put a little clamp back on. Connect this one onto here, like that. And now I'll be able to put my breather onto there. There's surface thrust on these threads. I'm using my thread pitch gauge here. I'm measuring a 125, and they're M10 size. I've got my M10 125, and all I want to do is I just want to run that over the thread. Now when I go and wind that nut on, it just glides on. See that? The same thing for our bolts that came out of my old one. See, that's a bit tight. No, so now that's a nice clean thread again. Look how rusty that one is. This came off my car. Smooth as, bro. Now we're going to hook all the connectors up, and we're going to do a test firing. Before we go any further, just make sure that all the four drive modes work. Last thing we need is one of the four drive switches not working, and you find that out after you've bolted the whole thing back in. All those modes work, and you've got to have it in neutral first, ignition on, and then just work your way through the transfer lever, and you'll hear the actuator working, and you'll see visually on the dashboard that it cycles all the way through. I'm just going to use a couple of G clamps just to to pull this in, I'm just going to put these center bolts in. They go on the center of the transfer case. That should keep us together for a bit. Then I'm going to drop this cross member down, supported by the jack, and then we're going to finish bolting in. Transfer case is all bolted up. Used some Loctite on the studs and bolts. I've got the breather tube there on the T-piece that I promised, and now all that's left is to bolt the tail shaft back in. Time to fill the transfer case. So I've got my 24mm ring spanner and this filling plug here. Picked this up from Super Cheap. It's this trick little pump thing. It's got a tube here. It comes with two different collars to fit a variety of bottles. You can just pump it straight out of the bottle. Pumping her in. Got our 2.8 litres. And when you're happy that you've not overfilled him, put him back on. Righto, so here we are a week later. Rookie error. So this transfer case is out of a petrol model, and the petrol model has a different diff ratio to the diesel, which means the tone wheel that's in there is suited to a different speedo, which means that my speedo is out by a margin. So what I need to do is remove that rear housing here and swap my old tone wheel over. You can see here in the book, it's my rear diff ratio 3.917. In the petrol model, which is the model of car that my transfer case replacement one come out of, is 4.3. So that's nearly 10% difference, about 9.8% difference, which means if I'm doing 100 on the speedo, I'm actually doing closer to 110. So I've loosened off my housing, taken my sensors out. Just a matter of taking this off. You see the difference. For reference, this is the output shaft speed sensor tone. You see it's very similar, so it's always going to read the same between both vehicles. And then my vehicle speed sensor, more holes on this one, just different size holes. There's my little check ball there. So yeah, you can really see the difference. This one's all nice and clean and shiny, and then mine, battle scarred. I've done the best I can just to smooth it up. Just a little file there just to catch any high points or any little dags or anything in there that could really just break off. And I've also just tried to return it back to a nice round shape. There's my check ball, got a little slot there. So put him on there and turn him. Just got to clean off all the old gasket. Make sure I get all that grease off. I want this to be absolutely free of grease before I put the gasket maker on. This is the Mitsubishi equivalent, the Ultra Grey from Permatex. Like icing a cake, really. That basically follows a rough line from the last one that was on there. Sort of going around on the inside of the holes. The directions do say, assemble parts immediately while silicone is still wet. Finger tighten until material starts to squeeze out around flange. Let dry for 1 hour, then tighten to torque spec. Which is what we're going to do. Now I want you to imagine for a second that this is in your vehicle and you need to replace one of these switches, or worse, you need to replace your actuator. Now, switches, relatively easy to do, because all you've got to do is just allow it to drop at the back, and that'll allow you to get a 22mm spanner into here, and you'll be able to loosen those off and replace them as you need to. Replacing the actuator is a whole different story, because you can't actually replace it without taking this top panel off, and you've got to remove these two little gears. Now it's actually this shaft here that you need to pull out. You see these little check balls? So as this moves in and out, check ball moves up and down, and that's what pushes up against your switches. Now when you go to pull this out, you've actually got to pull this out far enough to about there so that you can unhinge that little key on the end of the shaft. You go too far and you'll actually start dropping these check balls into the gearbox. So just imagine this is in the car, you've dropped this down, and even if you could get this plate off, this cover, you've then got to make sure that you don't pull this shaft out too far. Like, it's possible. Then you've got to get these gears back in the right position. Like, it's a lot of skill involved. I wouldn't do it.